Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is your girl Mitzi, and this is Mitzi. Let's think about it. Today we are thinking about resilience and inclusion. Isn't that a thinker? And luckily, I have Michael here who's going to be helping us think about this in a whole new way. So thank you so much, Michael, for coming on to my show and sharing your time and your perspective with me. Let's just dive right in. When you hear those words, resilience and inclusion, what does that make you think about?
Well, they're two different things in a sense, but I also think resilience tends to be so greatly overused in a lot of ways. But what it makes me think about is let's deal with resilience. It's the ability to adapt, it's the ability to function in a variety or in no matter what kinds of things befall us, that we have the ability to deal with them and to be able to move forward and to be able to cope with them. Um, Inclusion is really all about the fact that so often we think that if somebody is different than we are, we don't tend to include them because we think, well, they can't do the things that I can do. And so the result is that they tend not to be nearly as inclusive as we would like. Um, when people think that way, um, diversity people who are so-called experts in diversity, for example, very rarely talk about people with disabilities, and they do that because they say, well, disability isn't really what we deal with. We deal with race, gender, sexual orientation, and so on. I've been to conferences on diversity where in a 2 or 3 day conference, I'm the only person who at all spoke on disabilities. And the reality is, you're not inclusive if you don't involve or include disabilities. It is as much a minority, it is as much a part of our society as is anyone else, whether it's race, gender, sexual orientation, or whatever. In fact, the Center for Disease Control here in the United States says that 25% of all people have some sort of a disability, but collectively we tend to exclude them. And the reality is that they have as much to offer as anyone else. People with disabilities have gifts. People without disabilities have gifts. In fact, I make the argument that everyone on the planet has a disability. And the disability for most people is you're light dependent. You don't do
Mhm.
well in the dark. If suddenly the lights go out, you're running around trying to find a smartphone or a flashlight or something in order to have light so that you can be able to see and do the things the way you normally would. In a sense, I would say that's not nearly as resilient as you ought to be. You ought to learn how to be able to function without light being around you. I do. And the fact is, I can do that very well. So I think that we really need to reevaluate how we view people and how we view what resilience is and how we include different people.
Oh, absolutely. And I think you brought out on so many great topics that really needs to be talked about and really needs to be acknowledged because I think nobody really does talk about the fact that disability is considered to be part of this diversity. And I am so glad that you brought it up because and people don't want to talk about it. You know what I mean? People don't want to talk about disabilities. They don't want to acknowledge it because they feel like if they talk about it, they're already being offensive or offended in one way or another. And I think just not talking about it is like not trying to talk about the elephant in the room. You know what I mean? At some point or another, they are human beings. You know what I mean? They still want to participate in regular day life, just like anybody else would want to be included in a group or anything. So I think that's a valid point. And the fact that you're like everybody has some form of disability, I absolutely agree because in one way or another, if somebody takes away the electricity or somebody takes away the lights, like you said, what are you going to do? How are you going to handle life? You know what I mean? How can you really be adaptable? And I
Well,
don't think people go ahead.
I think also it's even worse than that. It isn't just that um, they don't want to be offensive or whatever. They fear it. Oh, that could happen to me, and I'm afraid of that. Um, Blindness, according to the Gallup polling organization, for many years was one of the top five fears in society. Not even disabilities, but blindness, because we're brought up thinking that eyesight is the only game in town, and we fear not having it, rather than recognizing that light independence is as much a gift as light dependence. Um, People, when I travel and speak, and I've been a keynote speaker ever since escaping from the World Trade Center on September 11th, 2001, when I ask people, tell me something a blind person can't do, number one answer usually is driving a car. Well, why is it that a blind person can't drive a car? When I ask that, most people say, well, because they can't see. Wrong answer.
Mhm.
The answer is we can't drive a car because we don't have the information when we're sitting in a closed vehicle. We don't get the information that allows us to drive that vehicle safely. That doesn't mean that we can't get that information. And in reality, in 2001, the National Federation of the Blind, the largest consumer organization of blind people, challenged private industry and universities to develop a vehicle that a blind person could drive. Now, I don't mean an autonomous vehicle, but I mean a vehicle where actually a person could sit behind the wheel and drive it just like a sighted person would drive a car. And the reality is that industry and universities worked together and developed the technology that gave a blind person the information if they're sitting in the driver's seat to drive a vehicle. And the proof of that came on in January of 2011. Yes, on January of 2011, when just before the Rolex 24 race in Daytona Beach, um, a blind driver drove a Ford Escape, specially modified, around the racetrack through obstacle courses and other things, and demonstrated that a blind person can drive a vehicle. So it is doable. And the reality is that we just assume because we don't know and we fear.
Yes, that's the right word. We assume, and a lot of the times we do assume out of our pure ignorance, you know what I mean? We don't know everything, you know what I mean? There's no way to know every knowledge out there in the world, but there's an opportunity to learn. There's an opportunity to get the information, and like you said, it's to become adaptable. So if like you said, if you put a blind person in a car, they won't know what it is because they don't have that information. But when you give them that information, they're able to learn. Just like if somebody doesn't know how to cook and you teach them or provide them the information how to cook, then they will develop that skill. And I don't think a lot of people realize that there's so much to learn in this world, but we just have to put our mind in that position to receive the information. And I don't think a lot of people do that. You know what I mean? So it's just like, what's a great way to develop resilience?
Talking about it, I wrote a book that was published last year entitled Live Like a Guide Dog: True Stories from a Blind Man and His Dogs About Being Brave, Overcoming Adversity, and Moving Forward in Faith. And the idea behind the book was to talk about the fact that we fear things. And we fear things mostly because we don't learn how to control fear. We fear so many things over which we have absolutely no control, and we don't learn how to separate and eliminate all the things over which we have no control and to stop worrying about them. It doesn't mean that
Yeah.
you don't be aware, but it does mean that you don't need to fear them. You don't need to worry about them because you don't have control over them. We didn't have control over the attack on the World Trade Center and the FBI, or excuse me, the Pentagon on September 11th, 2001. But every single person on the planet absolutely has control over how we deal with what happened on September 11th. And so we need to recognize that. Well, anyway, Live Like a Guide Dog was all about trying to help people learn that they can make fear a very powerful tool in their arsenal. And instead of letting it overwhelm, or as I put it, blind them, they can use fear to help them function. I'm not going to say don't be afraid, but I am going to say you have complete ability to control fear. And that's what Live Like a Guide Dog is all about, teaching people.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a great way because when we don't know how to control a situation, we automatically go into this flight, freeze mode where we don't know how to react. We get into shock. We retreat back into an old default setting or old default mindset because that's where we feel that sense of control. But that doesn't always prosper us and that doesn't always help us endure going forward. And you're absolutely right. When that 9/11 happened back then, it really did make a lot of people fearful, but then you also had a lot of people recognize what are you going to do with that fear. A lot of people stood up and helped out, and a lot of people stepped back and retreated. You know what I mean? So it's just like where is it in your character to react when it comes to fear? And I think a lot of people don't realize it until they actually have come across that crossroad and they realize like, oh dang, this is how I handle it. And I think when we put ourselves in more situations that are uncontrollable, like you suggested, it really helps develop that character so that we can react a certain way, so that we can see life differently, move about life differently, and not live in that fear factor that really can paralyze us to not even be mobile or thinking in a right state of mind. And I love the fact that you wrote this book because it really does give people this perspective to walk in your shoes or walk in your dog's shoes, to provide them that context so that people can move about in life a little bit more differently, more authentically. So for you, it's like, what is some other misconceptions about disabilities that people may not know of?
Well, again, blind eyesight isn't the only game in town. And what we need to really recognize is that everyone on the planet has gifts, and we shouldn't belittle or we shouldn't mitigate or lessen or ignore someone because they're different than we are. The reality is that we all have gifts, and what we need to do is to recognize that there are advantages and values of allowing people to use their gifts just like we want to use ours.
Mhm.
Leadership, for example, is a very important tool, and everybody wants to be a leader. Well, actually, what they want to be is a boss, and they don't
Mhm.
understand leadership. And the reality is that bosses may be leaders or they may be horrible leaders. And the reality is that a leader is someone who is able to take charge in any given situation and make everyone on the team more successful. And
Yeah.
that is something that not everyone knows how to do or can do. When
Yeah.
we were going down the stairs in the World Trade Center, there were times that various ones of us, including me, took leadership roles to help everyone go down the stairs without panic and without letting fear overwhelm them. And the reality is that that is something that we all face and that we all need to deal with. And in companies, there are so many times that bosses may not really be the best leaders. The best leaders know when to not only lead, but give up leadership to somebody else who has a gift that will allow them to help others succeed in accomplishing some task. And we just don't tend to do enough thinking about that and learning to enhance or allow everyone to express their gifts.
Well, absolutely. And I think it just brings on to the point that a lot of people live in competition. So instead of enhancing other people's gifts or recognizing or acknowledging somebody's gift and talent and utilizing it for the best for the team or for the environment or for the situation, instead it's about they see it as, oh, you will replace me or you will take my spot and I will have to crush you and I have to destroy you and I have to make sure that nobody sees you as well, however they see you. And it's like this competition complex and comparison is truly making people not really step into this leadership role and just be great leaders or just great humans in general because they always have this competition behind their in the back of
Yeah.
their minds. And it really does bring a big burden onto everyone when in reality in humanity this is all we have. Like human beings is all we got here right now. We're the best of the best that we can do. And it's like we just need to remember that we are a team because right now we don't have anything else. So it's just like it's one earth, one place, one humanity that we have. And it's like people just instead of seeing that as something good, they utilize it as something bad, as if we need to separate, we need to divide, we need to make people feel belittled and diminish them. And it's like we shouldn't do that because at the end of the day, if we get invaded by some extraterrestrial species or whatever, then all we have is each other. You know what I mean? Like the movies even show it. All we have is each other. So it's really interesting that people do not take this into consideration. So how do you necessarily think is a good way for people to start thinking of inclusion in a different manner?
Well, I think that what people really need to do is every night when you're going to sleep, take some time while you're in bed and think about what happened today. How did it all go? What worked? What didn't work? I reject the concept of failure because we don't fail. We may make mistakes. We may have something that didn't work, but the issue is that it's not a failure if we use it as a learning experience. And we should always use everything that happens to us as a learning experience, even the things that went well. What might I be able to do to make those go better? We need
Yeah.
to learn to listen to our inner voice that will tell us what we need to do. The fact of the matter is that we just don't tend to do that. Example, there's a game. Have you ever played Trivial Pursuit?
Yes.
Okay, so how many times when you were playing the game Trivial Pursuit did somebody ask a question and you thought of an answer right away, but then you went, oh, that can't be the right answer. It's too simple. And you thought about it some more and you gave a different answer, but it turned out the original answer you gave was the correct answer
All the time.
all the
Mm-hmm.
time. And that's because we don't listen to that inner voice. We reject it. And the reality is that our mind, our connection with God, if you will, our spirit knows what to do, but we need to learn to listen to it. We need to develop that muscle. And if we
Yeah.
spend time when we're going to sleep thinking about what happened, this happened today. Why was I afraid of that? What do I do to lessen that fear? What do I do to be able to move forward in a more positive way? If we take the time to really think about those kinds of things as we fall asleep, we will develop, if we do it regularly, we will develop skills that help us overcome fear, help us overcome worrying about the things over which we have no control, and help us learn to listen to that inner voice, which will help us, if you will, become more resilient.
Yeah, yeah. I think that is such a valid point because we always end up doubting ourselves and we don't go with our gut instincts. And sometimes when we don't follow that gut instincts, that the voice, that inner voice that's speaking to us, if we will make these mistakes over and over again until we start realizing, huh, maybe there's some truth to this. Maybe there's some reason for this. Maybe there's a lesson in this moment that I'm just not seeing. And it's just, we need to start having these real conversations and real thought provoking moments so that we can really take initiative and really stand for something that we already know. And we just
Mhm.
don't allow that doubt to seep in and to take over us. So it's like, Michael, what is a motivator to you that keeps you going?
I listen to that inner voice. I'm
Yeah.
used to it. I've been doing that my entire life. And I want to be the best person, the best creature that I can be. I want to
Yeah.
be able to advance and to move forward and uh, and also to serve others. My job is to help others become uh, better than they are. One of the things I told and tell everyone whenever I hire someone is I've hired you to do a job because you've convinced me that you can do the job. Now, a couple times that hasn't worked out. But what I also tell every one of those people is that my job is to work with you and have both of us learn how to use my talents and your talents to make you more successful. And there are things that I will do differently than you. And the reality is that I want to help you by using the skills that I have to enhance your job and your abilities. And if we work together, we will be better than if we don't work together. And I know that
Yeah.
that's true because I've done that so many times. And the people I've hired who really got that were always more successful because they learned that I had skills that they didn't have. And sometimes they say, well, how come you can do that and I can't? Well, the answer is that maybe if it's knowing about a product, I read the manual. Did you? Well, I didn't have time. Well, there you go. Of course, you have time. You need to make the time. Or I learned to listen. My late wife, didn't always think that I did, but that's okay. The fact of the matter is that I learned to listen. I learned to ask questions. I learned to be curious. And I think those are important things to do. I also told every salesperson I ever hired, when you are going out to meet with customers, especially for your first year, be a student, ask
Yeah.
questions. Don't be afraid to ask and let them answer because those people want you to succeed. They don't regard you as the enemy unless you treat them so that they regard you as the enemy, and that isn't necessary.
Absolutely. I think that is so spot on because people don't realize if you are honest with what you don't know, there will be more people willing to guide you, to help you, to provide you the answers that they know so that you can be successful. Exactly like you said, like people need to develop this spirit of learning, being a student, being a forever student. It doesn't matter how young you are or how old you are, but just having that spirit of wanting to know more information and willing that your cup is never full and that you're always willing to have more water in your cup or whatever information that you may be needing in the moment, so that at the end of the day, this information can be utilized to help not only yourself, but other people that you are impacted by. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck is that arrogancy of, oh, I know everything. I don't need to know this, or I don't need to know that, or I don't need this information, or I don't have the time. But in reality, it's like you do have the time. It's priorities that's messed up. You do have the knowledge, but you also can enhance your knowledge in another way because when we see our life through blinders, then we don't realize everything in our peripherals has so much value into providing the answers that we don't even see or even know is available because we're stuck only seeing what we only can see in front of us. And that's why sometimes I say, like, there's people out there that only can see as far as their hand goes because they don't allow themselves to know that there's more information out there. They don't allow themselves to even try to perceive life and the opportunity, that optimistic mindset of just, oh, what else is out there? That curiosity of just wanting to know more and just utilizing each other's strengths. So, yes, I think those are very valid points. And time is catching up to us, Michael. And it's
Yeah.
sad because I am truly enjoying this conversation and I'm truly enjoying your insight in this topic, but what can be some lasting words that you can leave us off with to keep on thinking?
Well, learn to control fear. Learn that fear can be a very powerful tool to help you. Learn to listen to your inner voice and let it guide you. It will help you every single time that you do that. And
Yeah.
the reality is that all of us have gifts. Don't ever underestimate the gifts that somebody else might be able to provide to you, even
Yeah.
though you may just think initially, oh, that doesn't make any sense at all. Stop and think about it and ask them why they think what they do. So the reality is that we need to recognize that everyone has gifts and abilities that can enhance what we do if we allow that to happen.
Well, absolutely,
And
absolutely. We
especially
all
don't
do.
worry about what you can't control. Focus on the things that you can and leave the rest alone.
Exactly. Leave the rest alone. Somebody else will do the work. Somebody else will pick it up. Like one thing I love doing is watching National Geographic and watching animals and things like that because people don't realize like the in places like in the African safari, they have animals that'll manage the waste to the air to every aspect of the environment, and it purifies it and cleanses it in such a way that all they're doing is focusing on their part and everybody else would focus on theirs. And it's like we need to think about it like that. We have our own gifts, we have our own talents, but when we work together and be honest and be open, then we are able to help each other in such a way that we can bask in such abundance, and we all deserve it, and we all deserve this mindset of abundance. And yeah, like you said, don't allow fear to entrap you. Learn to control your fear, learn to know where it's coming from, and just keep going. And if you can't do something, just do what you can do and just do the best that you can do for that moment or for that time, because hey, that's all that you can do and it's okay. And if all you can do is just get up in the morning and brush your teeth and just eat yourself a Pop Tart or whatever, then do that. just do that. Do something bare minimum. It's okay if you're on bare minimum activities, but just do the best that you can when it comes to that and then work your way up because hey, life you're given each day as it comes. And if you take advantage of the day that you have, then that's the present all up in itself. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Michael. And ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did, go check out Michael. I have access to his website, access to his book that we were referring to earlier on in the conversation, just so that you can continue on thinking, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, just so that you can do that. Because isn't that the point, ladies and gentlemen? Yes, it is. It's for us to keep on thinking. So, with that being said, bye.